Thanks very much, Chris, and thank you so much, everyone, for coming. We're quite excited to have this conversation. I'm saying that because I'm the one leading this part. This is the most important part of the conversation. Not because the other parts were not important, but actually, this is about sharing. This is about hearing from the people that are affected by this, and the people who are operating in the communities where this discussion is taking place. There's some background that I just want to give before we start the conversation. The first thing that I want to talk about is there's a date, a significant date, and I want to hear if anybody knows. September 1974. Does anybody know the significance of that date? Okay, no one. I was born. That is true, but actually there's somebody who was born in the same month and same year, somebody called Stephen Lawrence. And in April of 1993, that young man was murdered in a racially motivated attack. And then, the way that the whole thing sort of was investigated, there were failings both from the police, the Criminal Prosecution Service, which led to an inquiry that was led by, say, William McPherson. A report was produced by say, McPherson, and it came out in February 1999, so nearly exactly 20 years from today. So it's actually significant that we are doing this event, which we're calling Pause Rewind today. It's not just a random date that we chose. It's coming exactly 20 years after the McPherson report. So February 1999, we then fast forward 10 years later, 2009, the Stop and Search Reference Group was started. So there was exactly 10 years from the McPherson report. And then 10 years later, it's today, we're having the Pause Rewind conference, and we are talking about that subject. So this is really important in a number of ways, because say McPherson came up with 70 recommendations about what needed to be done. Some of these recommendations were implemented. Unfortunately, some of them haven't been fully implemented. I mean, we have heard today about issues like, is the police force reflective of the community that it operates in? And Suffolk Police is not, and I think we've heard about those things. But I think in terms of the discussion, what we want to talk about is what can be done, what is it that we need to do in order to. So we're looking at the next 10 years, we're looking at the next 20 years. We've got this report. There are some very, very important recommendations that are in this report, and I'll urge people to read this, because whilst we're talking about what needs to be done, in terms of rewinding the name of this conference, it's also looking at what was recommended in this report that hasn't been implemented. But also we need to talk about the next steps. We know that I think today at the courts here in Ipswich, they are sort of winding up the trial of a young person who was murdered in June of last year, Tavis. And at the back of that, we had conversations with the police, and some of the things that police were saying to us is, why are communities not coming out and talking to us about what they saw? This young person was murdered in broad daylight. And part of the reason is some of the stuff we've heard here today, communities and the police don't have very positive relationships. So people are not coming out and talking about things that are happening within those communities because of those fractured relationships. But also we have talked about the recruitment and the fact that the force is not reflective. Again, police ask us, why is it that people from these communities are not joining the police force? And part of it is, again, it goes back to those relationships. Why would people want to be in an organization where they feel that they're probably not going to be treated as fairly as they should? So, having said, all those things, I would like to now open up the conversation. With everything that we've heard today, you might have questions, you might need some clarifications from our panel, but I think most importantly, if you also have got things that you feel that as a community we need to be doing. As the Stop and Search Reference Group, which is a public forum that anyone is welcome. In your packs at the back of you will see that there is a flyer for the reference group, and our next meeting is going to be on the 27th of March. We have those meetings in the evening, so you're all welcome to attend. But I would like to, open up the conversation to you now, and talk about some of the, the things that you feel need to be done to move this conversation forward. So, any questions?
My name's Dr. Paul Andell. I'm a senior lecturer at the local university. I'm here and listening with interest at these presentations, some very powerful presentations. But my overarching feeling is one of déjà vu. And I say déjà vu because I led the Stop and Search Monitoring Group in the last century in Brixton, and some of the similar issues appear to be reoccurring. Now, learning from that experience and the next 10 years, I've got a couple of points to make which may be helpful. And those points, I think, Audrey, you were talking about body cams. I think in 2003 in Lambeth there was a ruling from Liberty on that very issue, or some advice from Liberty on that very issue, about how individuals, particularly young people, have a right to privacy, whereas that right to privacy I don't think can be counted in a demonstration. So there's a difference between filming individuals and filming in a group with a purpose. But I think that legal advice perhaps might be helpful, might clarify some of those issues with body cams. Secondly, the issue around training, monitoring, I thought was really interesting that the inspectors from Suffolk all have a qualitative accountability for their teams in Stop and Search. What we found helpful in Lambeth was a quantitative accountability, so that this kind of information could be used as management information to identify specific individuals or specific teams who are disproportionately stopping and searching communities from black and minority ethnic backgrounds. So I think that might be helpful moving forward. And given the fact that we reduced disproportionality and significantly increased the hit rate at that time using those techniques, it may be useful. I guess it goes back to kind of Bernie Grant's ideas of the Tottenham experiment of if you think that you are going to be held to account, then your practices will change. Just one final remark, which kind of brings us up to kind of 2019, and I wondered about is it 16 plus or something, your BME, kind of how you identify different minority ethnic groups, and given the fact that the demographics of Suffolk have changed so quickly, and I wondered how we are accounting for perhaps one of the largest per thousand of population in the country, that I'm talking about the Romani and Roma population. How are these kind of communities accounted for in terms of the Stop and Search statistics? And can you tell me about the use of police dogs and the policy on police dogs? Because observing what goes on and how young people perhaps are stopped and searched with dogs was quite a shock, really.
Sorry, can I just respond to the comment about the right to privacy?
Okay, yeah.
In practice, the law regarding the ability to be filmed or not filmed. Sorry, we can't hear you. The law around the ability to be filmed or not is very much been changed with the information changes and under GDPR. I mean, the trouble is, these laws now are qualified by the fact that your right to privacy is qualified by the detection of crime, and also the proliferation of cameras which will film people. So in practice, generally there is no right to privacy in a public place. They can film you, and then some of the rules around private areas are governed by the exemptions for detection of crime. So generally speaking, there is no real challenge, I don't think, to that element of body-worn cameras.
You did say it was 2000.
I do appreciate that. With regard to the supervisors, one good initiative that's coming out is that when I get the database, the spreadsheets, I'm now getting the supervisors' comments as well as the individual officers, and that's been really helpful.
It's key, yeah.
Either to show that the supervisors are getting the point and are actually seeing the concerns and I'm just endorsing the concerns, or then seeing where a supervisor hasn't got the concerns that they really ought to have. And that's an issue, because one of the areas where we've been very repeatedly strong is if we challenge a stop and search, it's not just about challenging them, it's also challenging the fact that it's also been signed off by a more senior officer, and why that officer hasn't spotted the concerns before us. So, you know, some of those issues are quite good, and I'll leave you to answer the questions if you can answer them.
Well, thank you. Very well answered there. So I would just add, you asked the point, Paul, about categorisation. It is self-reported ethnicity. So it's entirely how the person stopped wants to report their ethnicity, and if they don't want to, then it goes down as an unreported on the form. I think everything else has been answered by Audrey, unless you still have
Police dogs.
Use of police dogs. What was your query about? I didn't quite grasp what the question was.
My concern was a group of maybe 7 or 8 who appeared to be, they didn't self-define as such, who appeared to be Roma young men,
right,
being lined against a wall with an aggressive police dog, and 2 police officers having
Where
words
was
with
that?
them. That was on the waterfront 3 weeks ago.
Right. Unless I do have an officer here who any of my colleagues know that we had a specific operation. It wasn't one that I was aware of, and dogs are deployed as a resource across the whole of the county. We don't actually have that many, but we can usually get one to a location if required. They are pulled in for specific operations if something is pre-planned, and sometimes a dog will be seen as an operational tactic in
I've
that.
got no concern about the use of legitimate use of dogs in operations. My concern is about information sharing loops and the drift to militarism, whereby you won't get the community to talk to you. If you
and the way you describe it, I can't imagine what the circumstances were for that. What I can say is that all of our policies across the board are open to release to the public in terms of freedom of information requests. We can release that so that you can see the policy that exists around the use of dogs and the use of dogs in searches. And if you want to give me the date and the time later on, I can find out a bit more information if there was something specific in terms of a plan. There will certainly, I would really hope that there would be a record of it, and I can stand here and say there will certainly be a record of it, so at least I'll be able to get some better understanding. But colleagues in the room and myself, we don't have the details at the moment.
Okay, thank you.
It's about the accountability piece. With regards to the National Black Police Association, that is one of the things that we keep on speaking to the Home Office about. How are we going to have a more representative police service? How are we going to eliminate racism in the police service? And how are we going to, the recommendations at the McPherson report, how are we going to fulfil those? And certainly my belief is, until you hold officers to account who have been found guilty of race discrimination, then nothing will change. Okay? So we've got a meeting next week, and a specific round table is going to be held to talk about what are the next steps forward, because we keep doing this We keep doing reports, we keep doing research, we keep asking the question, why are black people not joining the police service? Okay? And my held belief is, from the work that we do from a national perspective, where we are representing officers who have been subjected to racism in a horrendous way, that I would say is illegal, it will be found in an employment tribunal that the officer was discriminated, was treated badly, and Cleveland Police, if you look up Cleveland Police, that will give you an example of what Tara and I have to, who we have to represent our officers against. And those officers are never held to account. Never held to account. And then actually what usually happens is they get promoted, so then they get into a higher position where they can make more decisions, which could be discrimination, but stereotyping, using assumptions. So we strongly next week are going to be saying, unless there are sanctions for chief constables, unless we met with the Association of Police and Crime Commissioners last week, for them to hold chief constables to account around if it has been found that there has been race discrimination or racism has taken place, then those officers should be held to account and not be promoted, and certainly not allowed to retire on their full pension benefits. So that piece of work is going ahead.
Thank you.
So I wanted to talk to the deja vu idea, because it's one I'm familiar with, having worked in this area for a while. And I think, of course, it's deja vu because we haven't begun to get to the root of the problem. All of the things that we've talked about today, whether it's recruitment, relationships with communities, stop and search, I think have the same fundamental root, and that is a lack of empathy amongst white people for black people. And until we get to grips with that, all of this stuff is going to be a problem, or the problem will shift. So I think the question becomes, well, so firstly, we misdiagnose the problem because we think racism is a problem that black people need to solve. And it's not. It's a problem that white people need to solve. It's our problem. So I suppose the question in my head is, because we're here specifically talking about policing, what can the police, and specifically Suffolk Police, do to learn to trust black people better? Because that's the problem. The problem is you don't. We don't. White people don't trust black people. That's the problem.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I've got two suggestions I'll tell you two. They're both slightly technical, I'm afraid, so I'll try and simplify them. One, the police complaints system doesn't reflect the Equality Act. If I bring a claim for discrimination against a school or a hospital or whatever in the Equality Act in the county court, if I can show there's what's known in the courts a prima facie case, so on the face of it, it looks like discrimination, then the burden of proof shifts to the person who made the decisions to prove it's not discrimination. The police complaint system, the person who's bringing the complaint has to prove discrimination completely, yeah, on a balance of probabilities, which means that the burden doesn't shift. All the officer who is being challenged has to do is say nothing, give no explanations why this person has been stopped, albeit there doesn't seem to be grounds for suspicion. Police officers say, I don't know, or, oh, you know, I thought it was a good idea at the time or something. As long as they don't say anything that strays into the area of, oh, I hate black people, or I arrest black people every Tuesday, or there's something on their record that suggests that they do stop black people every Tuesday, they can get away with it. So I would change the law so that the burden of proof in a complaint for discrimination mirrors the Equality Act.
We've asked for that, didn't we, Tara, in the Home Affairs Select Committee. We've asked for them to put racism into the Equality Act. and
It's already in. Sorry,
No.
I get you. Yeah.
institutional racism into the Equality Act.
It's not quite the same, but
But we're gonna.
yeah,
it's-
you actually need to change the police complaints
the
rules.
regulations.
Yeah.
And that's
The
what we're
second
looking
one
at.
is about recruitment. At the moment, the police do not have in their what's known as personal specification. If you're choosing an officer or a police member of staff, they don't have to show any lived experience of being of minority communities that they police. And I keep saying, you need to put as a desirable criteria in your recruitment lived experience of a minority community, and thus if you've got somebody who's equally good to a white person who hasn't got any experience, you can prefer the person with the minority community experience. And they've never done that. And in practice, to be fair to Suffolk Police, they tend to have the same standard policing as they do nationally. And they keep talking about, oh, we can't do this, it would be positive discrimination. It wouldn't be positive discrimination. Saying that it's an inherent part of a police officer's job to understand the needs and policing requirements of a minority community is desirable, is not discrimination. And if they could do that, that would be super.
I'm very keen to hear from the young people, particularly given that some of you are living.
Yeah.
Questions, comments, or your thoughts about today.
Go on, you've got to say something.
You had plenty of questions to ask me when I was in front again. Come on.
Yeah.
Do you guys have any comments about stop and search? Any thoughts? Just what you think about it in general? A couple of you, just even if you've not experienced it, what your thoughts on it are?
I think at the moment the way we're talking about how we can, it needs to be changed. But in the past, I think the only way that things have changed is when there's been a major event that has led to it, and that needs to change. So we need to have people really bring the change before something terrible has happened.
Very good.
But when you're going on about how they write reasons for why they stop, do they have to write like a more detailed version of it? That would make a bit more reasoning, because if you have the base reason there at the start, that gives you kind of like, right, okay, that makes a bit of sense, but in other terms, if it's been a bit vague in that version, if they've got a detailed version, would it not make more sense to have that? Because you can refer to it and be like, that's why they did it.
So I think what should happen.
So I've got the stop and search form here. It's authorized. So these are the forms that the police use for their. And as you can see, this is the section where they write the grounds.
It's a bit short.
Yes, it is. It is short. There is another section at the back where they can put some more detail, but this one at the front is the copy that you are given. I mean, we are now sort of moving into technology now with sort of use of some of these devices.
I think if you're an officer, you complain that was long.
Too long.
There was a notorious what they called a foot-long form. Police used to complain about all the time.
But yeah, I mean, the point that you make is really, it's a very
Context
important
is
point.
key, because if you're just given information like that small one there are reasonings there that they could be justified with a bit more detail, but because they're given very base, it's kind of like you're not making sense. Can I talk about a second reason? When you were talking about cannabis and if there was a reason for smelling, isn't that a bit of a, say, stupid idea, because you smell it once you've used it, so they're not going to find anything on it. Are you not looking for like mental, physical behaviours? Are they trained to do that, or are they just like, right, I can smell cannabis, I'm going to go check it?
Okay, the only thing I would say about the mental and physical behaviours is really interesting, because they've done quite a lot of work in America about subconscious bias and how you interpret behaviour. And it's how you perceive behaviour is very much deemed by your own subconscious biases. So in practice, what you would perceive as being completely normal, if somebody looked like somebody you felt sympathetic towards, you would perceive in a very different way if you felt antagonistic towards them. So what we're trying to do is get them away from the very subjective descriptors to much more concrete, positive things that they're checking their prejudice, to be frank, that they've got to make sure that it's so in practice you would think it was quite easy, but actually, as I say, psychology has shown that actually working out why somebody's doing something, is it suspicious that they've committed a crime? Is the person acting suspiciously, if you see what I mean?
Yeah.
So if somebody's walking along in the middle of the night and their hood's up and they're walking along, is that a suspicious behaviour? Can I give you an example?
Yeah.
We had a stop and search form which had about a black man running, didn't we? And he was running and he didn't have running clothes on, he was running his ordinary clothes. And it also mentioned the fact it was raining. And it was like, what? That was the grounds for suspicion. And we're like, why is it suspicious, even though he's wearing normal clothes, he's not wearing running clothes, that he's running?
How is it objectively reasonable grounds?
Well, absolutely.
Is that not when you would start using webcams? Because with the use of webcams, you are removing judgment and opinion, which can affect the outcome of an arrest.
Would a webcam tell you the fact that in a rainy situation, somebody who's running is behaving suspiciously?
That's the thing, though.
It's hard, isn't
If
it?
they're making it look like, if they're trying to literally say, right, that person's being suspicious, you have the webcam crew saying, there's nothing wrong here.
I agree. It's open to interpretation.
It is.
Often when we've looked around, what we've seen is acting suspiciously or paired nervous. Now, if you've had a bad relationship with the police in the past, or a bad encounter, not a relationship, you will be nervous. It's a bit like, you see someone coming towards you, your body produces a nervous response. Or you have the other one, which is a paired smug and smirking, so then you did a stop. So you're damned if you smile and kind of be cherry, and you're damned if you kind of look the other way and avoid it. So exactly what you said about interpreting what is